My beloved child, do not move away from this moment. Pause here, because something has shifted in a heart that has been carrying your name far more deeply than you realize, and what is happening right now is not what you expected. There is joy where uncertainty once lived. There is warmth where questions once remained unanswered. And there is a quiet, almost overwhelming emotion rising inside the person whose soul has been drawn toward yours. Something you did. Something you may have considered small, ordinary, or even forgotten, reached them in a way you could never have planned. You did not see the exact moment it touched their heart. You did not hear the thoughts that followed. You did not witness the expression that crossed their face when they finally understood what your action meant. But heaven has seen the hidden moment, and there is more behind it than you know. Stay with these words, because the part that made them happiest is not yet the part you think it is. There are moments in life that appear insignificant while they are happening. A gentle choice. A quiet act of patience. A message left unsaid because you refused to speak from anger. A kindness offered without demanding anything in return. A moment when you could have walked away bitter, yet you chose dignity. A moment when you remembered someone when they assumed they had already been forgotten. The world often overlooks these things because the world looks for dramatic gestures, but hearts remember what the eyes dismiss. Your soulmate has been remembering one of those moments. They have returned to it more than once. At first, they did not fully understand why it stayed with them. They simply knew that whenever their mind wandered back to you, this particular memory appeared again. Now something has changed. They have finally connected that memory to something they were secretly hoping to discover about you, and the realization has left them almost unable to contain what they feel. They had wondered whether you truly cared. They may never have told you that. They may have acted calm, distant, composed, or even unaffected. There were times they convinced themselves they should stop wondering about you altogether. They tried to be practical. They told themselves not to read too much into your actions. They warned their own heart not to become attached to possibilities. Yet beneath all those careful thoughts remained one question they could never silence completely: if this person truly knew my heart, would they still choose to treat it gently? Something you did answered that question without you realizing you were answering it. That is why their joy feels so powerful now. It is not merely happiness over an action. It is the relief of discovering that something they secretly wanted to believe about you might actually be true. They are beginning to see that you were paying attention in ways they did not notice. Perhaps you remembered a detail they mentioned casually. Perhaps you respected a boundary they expected you to challenge. Perhaps you offered encouragement at exactly the time they were beginning to doubt themselves. Perhaps you refused to embarrass them when you easily could have. Perhaps you remained kind even while protecting your own peace. Whatever the outward action was, the deeper meaning reached them later. And that delay matters, because sometimes the heart understands after the moment has already passed. Something happened recently that caused them to look backward, and suddenly they saw your action through completely different eyes. What once seemed simple now appears deeply meaningful. There is a reason this realization is arriving now. Your soulmate has been going through an inward season that few people around them fully understand. They have been questioning who is genuine and who merely enjoys access to them. They have been learning that attention is not the same as devotion, that flattering words are not the same as loyalty, and that someone can stand close while still failing to see the heart in front of them. This has made them more careful. They have become observant. They notice who remembers. They notice who disappears when nothing can be gained. They notice who listens without immediately turning the conversation back toward themselves. And when they placed your behavior beside the behavior of others, something became impossible for them to ignore. You were different. Not perfect. Not always certain. Not endlessly available. But different. And that difference is exactly what has begun to overwhelm them with joy. There was a moment when they almost misunderstood you. This is part of the hidden story. They almost interpreted your silence as indifference. They almost believed your distance meant you had forgotten them. They almost accepted an explanation that would have made it easier to close their heart and move forward. But then something interrupted that conclusion. It may have been a memory. It may have been something they discovered. It may have been a conversation that unexpectedly reminded them of you. It may have been the realization that while others made promises, you had quietly demonstrated something stronger through your actions. Suddenly, their old interpretation no longer made sense. They began asking themselves, why would someone do that if they felt nothing? That question opened a door they had worked very hard to keep closed. Now memories are returning differently. Your words sound different in their mind. Your pauses feel different. Even certain moments when you seemed hesitant are being understood in a new light. They are beginning to realize that perhaps you were not cold, perhaps you were careful. Perhaps you were not disappearing, perhaps you were trying not to force something that needed time. Perhaps you were not ignoring what existed between you, perhaps you were protecting it from becoming careless. This possibility has stirred something inside them that they did not expect to feel so strongly. Hope. And hope is dangerous only when it is built on fantasy. But this hope feels different to them because they can connect it to something real that you did. That is why their emotions have become so intense. My child, understand this. Sometimes the most unforgettable thing you can do for another person is to reveal your character when you do not know they are watching. You have done this. There was a situation in which your true nature showed through, and your soulmate either witnessed it directly or learned about it afterward. You were not performing. You were not trying to impress them. You were simply being yourself. This is precisely why it affected them so deeply. People know when kindness is calculated. They know when generosity is being displayed for applause. But what they discovered about you did not feel staged. It felt honest. And honesty has become rare enough in their world that discovering it in you brought relief they did not know they needed. For a while, they kept this reaction private. They did not want anyone to know how much it affected them. They did not even fully admit it to themselves. They tried to continue with their normal routine. They answered questions. They handled responsibilities. They smiled at familiar faces. Yet something inside them had changed. Your name felt warmer in their mind. Their thoughts about the future became less rigid. Possibilities they had dismissed began quietly returning. Then came the moment that made everything stronger. Someone around them unknowingly confirmed what they had already begun to suspect. This person may not have understood the importance of what they were saying. It could have been an innocent comment, an observation about you, or a mention of something you had done. But when your soulmate heard it, their heart reacted immediately. It was as though two separate pieces suddenly connected. They realized that the action they had been thinking about was not an isolated performance. It reflected something deeper about who you are. They became quiet. Someone may even have noticed the change in their expression. But they could not explain it, because how do you explain that one sentence has just rearranged the way you see someone? Inside, however, the questions began rapidly. What if I was wrong about them? What if they cared more than I realized? What if I almost walked away from something genuine because I was afraid to trust it? And then came the thought they could not dismiss. What if this person has been showing me the answer all along? That thought is still moving through them now. You may wonder what exactly you did. You may be searching backward through your memories, trying to identify a grand gesture. Do not assume it was grand. The greatest effect often comes from the smallest authentic moment. Perhaps you defended them when they were not present. Perhaps you refused to participate in gossip about them. Perhaps you remembered something important to them. Perhaps you showed compassion when they expected judgment. Perhaps you gave them space without punishing them for needing it. Perhaps you encouraged something they cared about instead of competing with it. Perhaps you kept your word. Perhaps you showed patience after they had become accustomed to people leaving at the first inconvenience. Whatever it was, your soulmate felt seen. And being seen without having to beg for attention can make the heart tremble. They have spent enough time questioning whether people value the real version of them. There are parts of their personality they rarely show. There are insecurities beneath their confidence. There are memories they do not discuss openly. There are dreams they protect because others once dismissed them. Your action touched one of those hidden places without you knowing it. It told them something your words alone could never have proven. It told them, you matter here. That message reached farther than you imagined. They are not simply happy because you did something considerate. They are overwhelmed because your action arrived in a place within them that had been waiting for reassurance for a long time. It touched an old fear. It challenged an old belief. Somewhere inside them existed the idea that people eventually stop caring, that affection weakens when things become complicated, that vulnerability makes love disappear. Your action contradicted that belief. And now their heart does not know what to do with the possibility that you may be safer than they expected. This is where the story becomes deeper. Because joy is not the only emotion rising inside them. There is also regret. Not the kind that should frighten you, but the kind that appears when someone realizes they may have misjudged a person who was trying to show them sincerity. They are remembering moments when they held back. Moments when they questioned your intentions. Moments when they responded cautiously because they were protecting themselves from disappointment. They are wondering whether you interpreted their caution as rejection. They are wondering whether they made you feel unseen while secretly hoping you would see them. That realization has created an ache beneath their joy. They wish they could go back and respond differently to at least one moment. There is something they almost said to you and did not. This has been sitting in their memory. They remember the atmosphere around the moment. They remember what you said before it happened. They remember how close they came to revealing something real. But fear interrupted them. They changed the subject, became quiet, acted casual, or allowed the moment to pass. At the time, they convinced themselves that silence was safer. Now they are questioning that decision. Because what you did afterward showed them that perhaps they did not need to be as afraid of your heart as they were. Imagine the weight of realizing that the person you were afraid might disappoint you may have been the person quietly trying to protect what mattered. That is the emotional place your soulmate is standing in now. They are happy, but their happiness carries urgency. They do not want to miss another moment. Something inside them is beginning to say, "Do not wait forever." This is why you may notice a change if contact exists between you. Their energy may become warmer. Their words may become more intentional. They may ask something they never asked before. They may appear to be testing whether the door is still open. They may mention a memory that seems random but is not random at all. They may suddenly become curious about your feelings, your plans, or whether someone else has entered your life. And if there has been distance, the same shift can happen quietly before anything visible changes. Before people make meaningful moves, they often rehearse them internally. Your soulmate has been doing this. They imagine what they would say if they reached out. They imagine your reaction. They wonder whether you would welcome them or protect yourself. They think about what they would need to explain. They think about whether too much time has passed. Then they remember what you did, and courage rises again. This cycle has repeated more than once. But something has recently tipped the balance. Joy is becoming stronger than fear. That is important. Because fear has governed more of their decisions than they want to admit. They have feared choosing incorrectly. Feared being vulnerable with the wrong person. Feared repeating something painful from the past. Feared looking foolish for caring deeply. They learned how to conceal emotion because concealment felt safer than rejection. But joy behaves differently. Joy makes the heart want to move. Joy creates courage. Joy whispers, "Maybe this is worth discovering." And right now, because of something you did, they are beginning to feel that perhaps knowing you more deeply would be worth the risk. There is another detail they have noticed, and this detail surprised them. You did not demand recognition for what you did. That may be one of the strongest reasons it affected them. You did not stand before them saying, "Look at how much I care." You did not pressure them to respond. You did not turn the moment into a transaction. You allowed your action to speak for itself. This gave it credibility. Your soulmate has known people who gave only so they could later collect. People who showed kindness and then reminded them of the cost. People who offered attention only while receiving equal attention back. Because of this, they developed an instinct to question motives. But they cannot find the hidden price attached to what you did. That has moved them. They are beginning to understand that perhaps your presence in their life was never as random as they first assumed. Again, this is a fictional spiritual message, a cinematic telling of the invisible emotional threads between two people, but within this story heaven is showing them a pattern. They are remembering how often your name appeared during unexpected moments. How conversations seem to circle back toward themes connected to you. How certain lessons about trust, patience, and authenticity somehow made them think about you. They resisted those thoughts at first. Now they are listening. And one particular realization has taken hold. You made them feel valued without making them feel owned. That distinction matters deeply to them. They want love that does not suffocate. They want closeness without losing themselves. They want devotion without control. They want someone who can say, through actions, I care about you, and I respect who you are. Your action carried exactly that energy. That is why their happiness feels almost unbelievable. You may have simply been doing what felt right. But to them, it answered a prayer they had never spoken aloud. There was a night when they wondered whether anyone would ever understand this part of them. They may have been surrounded by people and still felt alone. They may have scrolled through messages without finding the one conversation they actually wanted. They may have remembered old disappointments and thought, maybe I expect too much from people. Then life moved on. But now, looking at what you did, they are thinking, maybe I was not expecting too much. Maybe I was expecting it from the wrong people. And when that realization comes, everything changes. Because suddenly you are no longer being compared to their past. You are being separated from it. You are becoming your own category in their mind. This does not mean they have every answer. It does not mean uncertainty has vanished. Human hearts are complicated, and meaningful relationships require communication, honesty, timing, and mutual choice. But within this story, what has changed is significant. They are no longer asking only, could this work? They are beginning to ask, what if this is already becoming something real? That question has brought a smile to them when no one was looking. Something reminded them of you. And instead of feeling confusion, they felt gratitude. They thought about the action again. They imagined telling you that it mattered. Then something happened that made them laugh softly at themselves, because they realized how deeply affected they had become. Perhaps they caught themselves rereading something. Perhaps they searched for your name. Perhaps they remembered your expression. Perhaps they began composing words in their mind and stopped halfway because the emotion felt too obvious. And then they smiled. Not because everything is resolved, but because hope has returned. There is another layer, however, and this is where you must stay attentive. Your soulmate recently discovered that the thing you did may have required more from you than they originally understood. At first, they thought it was easy for you. Now they know it was not. Maybe you were carrying your own disappointment while still choosing kindness. Maybe you were uncertain too. Maybe you were protecting your own heart while refusing to become cruel. Maybe you had every reason to withdraw completely, yet you left behind one gesture that showed you still cared. Learning this changed the emotional weight of everything. Because kindness means one thing when it costs nothing. It means something entirely different when a person chooses it while hurting. Your soulmate sees that difference now. And this is the moment their happiness turned into something almost overwhelming. They realized, they could have treated me differently, but they chose not to. That thought touched them profoundly. It made them revisit their assumptions about you. It made them wonder how much of your emotional world they failed to notice. It made them curious about things you never told them. What were you feeling then? What were you trying to protect? Why did you choose grace? Did you hope they would understand eventually? Did you think they would never know? These questions are creating a new hunger in them, not merely to receive your attention, but to understand you. That is different from infatuation. Curiosity about your inner world is deepening. They want to know what makes you quiet. They want to know what makes you feel safe. They want to know what you have been carrying alone. They want to know which parts of yourself you show easily and which parts require trust. And somewhere inside, they are realizing that perhaps they spent too much time wondering whether you understood them without asking whether they had truly understood you. This realization has humbled them. It has softened something in them. They are becoming less concerned with protecting their image and more concerned with protecting the connection. And yet, they are still whole.